Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. With the government embroiled in the Sushma Swaraj Vasundhara Raje crisis, two critical questions are crying out for attention. First of all, how serious are the charges facing the ministers, and do they call for resignation or even sacking? And secondly, what should we make of the Prime Minister's prolonged, persistent but mysterious silence? Is it understandable, or is it in fact irresponsible? With me to shed light on these questions and perhaps answer them for us is one of India's foremost legal minds, former Solicitor General and former Attorney General Sushma Swaraj. Mr. Swaraj, let's start with Sushma Swaraj, right. And I'm going to take you through all the different accusations made against her one by one to get your opinion about what you make of them. First of all, Mrs. Swaraj used her power as foreign minister to help Lalit Modi obtain a British travel document at a time when the government had revoked his passport, thus undermining the revocation of that passport. Now, in your eyes, given that she did that of her own volition, without consulting the Prime Minister, without even consulting the Foreign Secretary, was it abuse or misuse of power?
No, I don't think so, Karan. After all, what did she do? If I am not mistaken, she asked the UK authorities to give him a visa, whatever it is, to go to Portugal, or travel documents.
What she did was to indicate to the UK authorities that the earlier objection indicated by Mr. Chidambaram, that relations would suffer if he was given a travel document, no longer applied. That they could go ahead and give a travel document, it would have no adverse impact on Indo-British relations. But she did that without consulting the Prime Minister, without consulting the Foreign Secretary.
There are two questions, Karan. First of all, should she have consulted the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary? In a way, it would have been appropriate if she had done so. But, after all, people can have friends. I don't understand. This was in order to enable him, that chap Lalit Modi, to go to Portugal to attend to his wife who was receiving treatment for cancer.
That's right.
So what's wrong in that? I don't understand that. I can understand.
So there is no abuse or misuse of power in doing this?
I don't think so. Unless there's a direct nexus with the office she is occupying, the function she is discharging, I don't think so. Accusations without more, to my mind, don't call for resignation.
What about the fact that she kept this quiet? It was only made public when the British paper, the Sunday Times, revealed it. There is, I'm told, no notification, no file, no documentation in the Foreign Service about this. She did it verbally on the phone to the British High Commissioner. Is that improper?
But I find it very difficult that the High Commissioner would act on a verbal request. Surely there should be something on record. But in any case, take it worse, it's helping a friend.
And that's okay?
Because it doesn't have any nexus with the office she is occupying or the function she is discharging. This any effect for India's security or India's international image?
But it is the revocation of a government position, and she happened to do it, by the way, at a time when the government was defending that position in court. Does that make it more problematic?
Well, I must say it was not improper, but inappropriate.
So it was.
There's a distinction between improper, as you know, impropriety, but inappropriate.
So this is not misuse of power, but it's inappropriate use of power.
Well, it was an inappropriate action.
All right. Let's come to the second accusation against her. She acted in this way to help a man who was her daughter's client. He's admitted he's been her daughter's client for 4 years, who was also her husband's client. The husband himself has admitted he's been Lalit Modi's lawyer for 22 years. Does that amount to conflict of interest?
No. Conflict of interest has been seen in the context of what is done. What conflict of interest? Cannot a person have lawyers? And I believe he was offered some directorship on the board.
Well, I'll come to that later.
Okay.
Let's come to that later.
All right.
At this point, what I'm saying is she acted to help someone who was her daughter's client and her husband's client. Is that conflict of interest?
Daughter's client? What do you mean daughter's client? Daughter appeared, I believe, her appearance was recorded in the Supreme Court. Actually, Lalit, who is now a judge, a very senior counsel at that time, he was appearing. She was just her junior, her appearance recorded.
What about the fact that the husband was Lalit Modi's lawyer for 22 years? 22 years.
Maybe. Lalit Modi thought he was a good lawyer, so he kept him. About 22 years.
But taking this action to help your husband's client is not conflict of interest?
But helping in what? On what grounds? Does that action of helping him in any way affect our country's interests, security, our international image? I mean, anything like that? What I mean to say is there should be some finding, adverse finding, by a court of law, fed up of these accusations galore.
So, in the absence of that, there is no conflict of interest.
In my view.
Let's come to the third accusation against Mrs. Swaraj. She did this to help someone when she knew that 1 year earlier her husband Swaraj Kaushal had written to Lalit Modi asking for Lalit Modi's help to get his nephew Jyotirmoy into a British university. Is there therefore here some sense of quid pro quo?
Karan, quid pro quo in what? I mean, you may say in life, don't you return a favor for favor? Not quid pro quo in the sense of corruption. Someone helped you in the past, you want to help him now? Now, if it does not affect, again repeat, our country's interests, our country's security concerns, our international image, I don't see anything wrong. I think it's just being blown up out of proportion.
So the critical criterion in your mind is whether this affects the country's interests, the country's security, and because neither the use of power, which you call inappropriate, nor the alleged conflict of interest, which you don't accept, or even the alleged quid pro quo, which you don't accept, because none of these three affect the country's interests or affect the country's security,
or
they're not a problem for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's come then to what some consider to be the gravest charge against Sushma Swaraj. The argument that she has breached section 13(1)(d)(3) of the Prevention of Corruption Act. For the audience, unlike you who don't know what 13(1)(d)(3) amounts to, I'm going to read that section out. It says, a public servant is said to commit the offence of criminal misconduct if he, while holding public office as a public servant, obtains for any person any valuable thing or pecuniary advantage without any public interest. Some people would say a British travel document is a very valuable thing. Secondly, there is no public interest served whatsoever in helping Lalit Modi obtain one. So is she guilty of breaching 13(1)(d)(3)?
I think that's a very far-fetched interpretation of 13(1)(d). Valuable thing was in the proper context, Karan. Telling the British government, give him travel documents, if permissible under your rules and regulations, is very important. We won't stress that. What's the valuable thing there? What's corruption? Like they're doing favor to friends with your corrupt acts? Let's not take it to an absurd limit. There must be some case. Suppose Sushma Swaraj was convicted of parking in a no parking zone. Would you say, must resign? That must have some nexus with the function she is discharging, the office she is holding, some proximate nexus.
So you are firmly of the opinion she hasn't breached the Prevention of Corruption Act?
Not at all.
Finally, most recently it's emerged that Sushma Swaraj's husband Swaraj Kaushal was in April offered an alternate directorship in one of the Modi family companies, Indofil, as a replacement for Lalit Modi, who clearly, because he's out of the country, can't attend the board meetings himself. Now, given that this happened just 9 months after Mrs. Swaraj acted to help Lalit Modi, does it suggest quid pro quo? Or, because Swaraj Kaushal has been Lalit Modi's advocate or lawyer for 22 years, is this acceptable and understandable?
But, Karan, many lawyers are on the board of directors. There's nothing unusual about it. Many people say if a lawyer has rendered good service to the client, they say, well, that's him on a board. He'd be a useful person. But in any case here, isn't it academic? He declined it, I think.
He did. But the question Congress raises, and that's the question I put to you, is the offer of an alternate directorship tantamount to quid pro quo, a return for the fact that 9 months earlier she had helped Lalit Modi?
I think we are stretching it too far. You see, the trouble is we are suspicious throughout. Suspicion shouldn't be rampant. Vigilance, yes, but not every move viewed with a prism of suspicion. So you read meanings, read significance in anything which in normal case should be okay.
Let me just sum up Sushma Swaraj before I move on to Vasundhara Raje Sushama.
Yeah.
I've asked you 4 critical questions. Whether the accusation that she is guilty of abuse of power is accurate, whether the accusation that she's guilty of conflict of interest is accurate, whether the accusation that she's guilty of quid pro quo is accurate, and whether she's breached the Prevention of Corruption Act. And to all 4, you said,
In my opinion, no.
In your opinion, in all four, no.
So far as things stand.
So far as things stand. But you're fairly confident of that opinion at the moment.
At the moment, in the light of the prevailing facts and circumstances, I think it's a... Look, I can't be very dogmatic, but I think that's the correct opinion.
All right, let's then come to Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Now, in her case, was it okay or was it improper for her, while she was occupying the post of Leader of Opposition in the Rajasthan Assembly, to give a character witness statement for someone who was wanted by the Enforcement Directorate for questioning, but was not, in any legal sense of the word, a fugitive, nor was he in any way charged, nor is there an FIR against him?
So what's wrong there? What did she do? Give an affidavit? Did she give evidence?
She gave a character
In other words,
statement.
she vouched for him. She vouched for him. Thereby, how did she affect the country's interests? How did she affect the office she was occupying? I mean, we must have some realistic considerations, not stretch it too far. This by itself, I don't think amounts to any misconduct.
This is very important. There's been a lot of criticism of Vasundhara Raje Scindia because while occupying the post of Leader of Opposition, she gave a character witness statement for a man who's wanted for questioning. But as I said, he's not a fugitive.
Yeah,
You're
correct.
saying there's nothing wrong in that.
And of course, this is not an answer, but then why didn't that Congress government take action? What were they doing? They didn't think anything wrong in it. I'm sure they would have proceeded against Vasundhara or done something or the other.
So there's no harm
Their
in...
silence also seems to suggest that they didn't really think of it as very serious.
But the key point you're making is that just because she's leader of the opposition doesn't mean she can't give a friend a character witness statement. She's entitled to do it in her personal capacity. There's nothing improper in doing it.
Yeah.
Did you say yes?
Yeah, whether he deserves that certificate or not, I don't know. But if she thinks that he deserves the certificate and gave it, I don't think there was any act of corruption, any act of serious misconduct committed by her.
Let's come to the second argument made against Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Did she compromise herself by asking for this witness statement to be kept secret and by stipulating specifically that the Indian authorities must not be told about it? Or does she have grounds for saying keep it secret because she had found that the Congress government in Rajasthan had created the Mathur Commission of Inquiry against trumped up allegations of corruption. She had to fight all the way to the Supreme Court to get the commission struck down, and therefore perhaps she had a fear that if this witness statement is revealed, it might provoke the Congress government to take further vindictive action against me.
Right.
Does that justify her wanting to keep it secret?
Frankly, Karan, at first blush also didn't like it, keeping it secret. Anything secrecy is a badge of fraud, as they say. But these considerations are relevant. At that time, she was a target of the Congress government. And this is a plausible explanation. Don't read too much into it than necessary. That's all I'm saying. After all, we are reading. I'm not concerned with Congress or BJP or anyone. If we lay down such standards, that there will be mass resignations on these grounds.
But you said something very important, and I'm reiterating it for the audience. This explanation that she was already being harassed, she didn't want to provide further opportunity to Congress to harass her again, is a plausible explanation.
Yeah, it is.
And therefore, it is reasonably good grounds for wanting to have that statement kept secret.
Yes, yes.
One more question on Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Do you believe she should have explicitly in that witness statement itself made clear that she was giving this in her personal capacity? Should she have explicitly made that point? Because she didn't.
But did she give it as a leader of the opposition? She just gave a statement. So where's the question of making it clear that giving in a personal capacity? Unless it's stated in other capacity, it's always to be presumed it's in a personal capacity.
So let me now at this point sum up what we've achieved as far as Vasundhara Raje Scindia is concerned. Once again, I've asked you three critical questions. Whether she was right to give a witness statement for a man like Lalit Modi. Secondly, whether it was improper to want it kept quiet. And thirdly, whether she should have explicitly said it was being done in her personal capacity. And in all three cases, you don't think she's done anything wrong.
Yeah.
So she too...
Nothing wrong in that sense. Maybe foolish.
Foolish perhaps, but not wrong. To sum up about both Sushma Swaraj and Vasundhara Raje Sindhya. Are these therefore in your eyes resignation issues?
No. No.
Not at all.
As things stand at present, as I said, if there is any adverse finding by a court of law or a judicial tribunal, no question about it, then resignation must follow. The person can't say the tribunal order is wrong or this, that, nothing of the kind. But in the absence of any such thing of a judicial tribunal or court of law giving a clear-cut finding which smacks of corruption, which is some nexus of the office she is occupying, as I said, not driving at excessive speed or parking in a no parking zone, I don't think so. And we must realize that when we stretch this so far, we are laying down wrong precedents which the other government use when it suits them.
So I'm going to conclude this section by putting one simple question to you. Both Vasundhara Raje Sindhya and Sushma Swaraj have got what I call a clean chit from Soli Sorabji.
Well, I don't say clean chit. What I want to say is Caesar's wife must be above suspicion. That's one thing. And we must see to it, I don't want to say clean chit, they haven't got something damning against them which should compel them to resign.
That's clear enough. Let's then come to the questions that are being asked about the Prime Minister's handling. This is clearly, as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, the most serious crisis to hit his government in the 13-14 months it's been in power. Yet for 3 weeks, he's been persistently but mysteriously silent. Is that silence in these circumstances, in your eyes, understandable, or is it irresponsible?
Not at all irresponsible. He's a very astute politician. He knows how to keep silent. If he were to speak out every time, then he'd do nothing but answering all the allegations made by the other party against his ministers or people in his party. Prime Minister, we should depend upon him to know when to speak, what to speak. Well, astute politician, it may be a question of expediency, but no question of irresponsible.
Let me pick up on what you said. Prime Minister should know when to speak and what to speak. Is there any moral compunction, any moral duty on a Prime Minister to address the concerns the country may have when two senior ministers, one a chief minister, one the foreign minister, have questions of propriety hanging over their head? Should he step in at that point and tell his countrymen why he believes those questions are misplaced?
As I said, Karan, it's for him to decide. But please appreciate one thing. If this is accepted as a precedent, he'll have to do it every time allegations are made and serious accusations. So please leave it to him. He knows much better than you and I the proper time and place where to do it. But I wouldn't call it irresponsible at all. I may call it politically expedient.
The Prime Minister's silence is expedient.
Politically expedient, but not irresponsible.
Is it morally right?
Morally right?
Does he have a duty to address the concerns his countrymen feel? Clearly, this is an issue that concerns Indians.
Yes.
He can settle their concerns by pointing out that, look, the questions in your mind are wrong. Does he need to address those concerns?
But if he does this on this occasion, it will have to do on other occasions. There will be other accusations made out. Many accusations against Vasundhara.
Well, he'll only have to do it on other occasions if the same sort of questions arise again. If they don't, he won't have to do it. It's not a precedent that has got to be followed necessarily. It will only have to be followed if people behave in the same, in quotes, foolish way again. So why does this precedent matter?
I think, why don't you ask him the question?
But you don't think there's any moral compunction on him to speak up?
Not moral compunction, I don't think so, because there are many other considerations involved here. And this sort of game of leavening accusations and counter-accusations is an old game which all politicians play. I'm sure BJP played it when they were in opposition, and maybe they will do it in future if the occasion arises. I would not call it irresponsible.
Let me quote to you something from the BJP manifesto. It says, the biggest challenge that India faces today is to restore the credibility of and trust in the union government. And then it adds, the BJP will work for restoring the trust and credibility of the government. With that in mind, and that's a commitment the Prime Minister made the country, should he not have said something about this when he did his Man Ki Baat last Sunday? And remember, Man Ki Baat means matters in his mind. Should he not have addressed this in some way? Because he was completely silent.
As I told you, Karan, he may have his own reasons for being silent. I'm sure he'll break his silence when the occasion arises. Maybe he thinks it's not an opportune moment. I can't really say about the Prime Minister, except I can say one thing, that I won't call it morally wrong or irresponsible. It may be politically expedient. And in politics, expediency rules the roost, whether you like it or not.
Political expediency is usually a euphemism for something that skates on thin ice. You may not actually call that immoral, but it ain't morally high ground either.
Yes, you're right. So what follows?
My point then is this. This Prime Minister came to power promising cleanliness, accountability, transparency, promising to correct corruption. His famous phrase was, na khaunga, na khane dunga. Has he damaged that image by now behaving expediently?
Well, there is thinking that Prime Minister's silence is casting a doubt, not a doubt, on what is said in the manifesto, what the BJP said in the manifesto. So maybe if I were the Prime Minister, I would certainly go and do it, but I'm not a Prime Minister, I'm not a politician. I don't know how the world of politics goes, but I think we should give a little time and see when and where he'll make the statement, which I'm sure he will when the occasion arises. Because what you stated is correct, but that doesn't mean every accusation he has to reply.
You know, you said something very important at the beginning of that answer. The Prime Minister's silence has raised doubts about that commitment made in the BJP manifesto, which I read out a moment ago. The commitment to restore credibility, to restore trust in the government. It's cast a shadow over that.
No, yeah, you must say shadow at the highest, in some minds.
A shadow in some minds. One more question. This Prime Minister came to power with the belief that he would be strong, he would be decisive. There would be no remote control, there would be no ally pressures. He would do the right thing whenever there was need to do so, and he would do it fearlessly, he would do it promptly. Has that image of strong, decisive leadership been affected by his prolonged silence?
Karan, wait. Prolonged silence is a relative concept. Let's see how long the silence. It may be he breaks his silence on a proper occasion and reveals the full fact. Leave it to him and his judgment and his conscience.
Let me ask you an overall question. Governments are often judged by how they handle crises. It's when you're under pressure, it's when things go wrong that your judgment counts most of all. Are you impressed by the way this government has handled this crisis? Or do you feel they could have done better?
In the circumstances, I think they handled it well. I don't think they should have walked into the parlor of the opposition and done what the opposition wants them to do.
When you say in the circumstances they've handled it well, does that include Rajnath Singh, the Home Minister, scoffing at a question at a press conference when he was asked? He said, this is not the UPA, this is the NDA, our ministers don't resign. And he scoffed at the question and dismissed it. Was that part of well handling?
Well, he should not have scoffed. Maybe that's his way of answering questions, his personality. Maybe he lost his cool.
But nothing more.
Scoffing at so many things happen. If we are going to read things into all the various eccentricities, idiosyncrasies of the ministers and the statements, I think we won't get along. Come to the basic thing. Namely, if there is any finding, I thought, what is the media trial going on today?
In your eyes, is this a media trial of Sushma Swaraj and Vasundhara Raje Sindhya?
Seems so, at least on some channels.
You think the media is being unfair?
Well, media is entering into fields which should be best left to the course of law. And maybe in a way unfair, but unfairness and bias is bound to be there, depending on the person, the anchor person, depending on the news channel.
Let me put it like this. In America, the Watergate expose was done by the Washington Post. In Britain, the phone tapping expose was done by a variety of newspapers, but largely The Guardian.
Yeah.
Even in India, it was the Helka that exposed Operation West End, that revealed Bangaru Lakshman, then BJP president, literally with the money in his hands.
But I'm not at all against media exposing these things. Media trial must be distinguished from media bringing to the notice of the people and the authorities that look, these things have to be looked into, these things have to be explored. You mustn't remain quiet. For example, Jessica Lal, nothing was being done. The media was quite right in pointing out the inaction, the delay. But once the trial starts, I'm just giving an example, then you do not become the judge. That's the function of the court of law.
But here the trial hasn't started, the court of law hasn't stepped into the picture. Here the media is drawing attention to issues with the hope of forcing either the Prime Minister to act or the two ladies in question to put in their resignations. The media here is exposing what it calls the improprieties of these two ministers. Here you really believe the media has gone too far?
Well, look, media has a role to perform. And as I said, media we can't brush everyone at the same time. I can't compare Karan Thapa with another person whom I have in mind who asks questions as if he's a judge, jury, and executioner. But the point is, Karan, you are right. I would support the media. We have to. That's really a watchdog of democracy. These things must be kept. But keep it in proportion. Keep it in proportion. Don't jump to conclusions.
That proportion has been missed or lost at this moment.
I should think so. I think so. Regretfully, I think so. It should have been handled better.
So your conclusion is that the two ministers in question, as well as the Prime Minister, have handled the matter properly, adequately. Maybe one or two of them have been foolish, but they've done nothing wrong. When it comes to the media, you think an essential element of proportion and balance is missing.
But I can't raise a charge to the media as a whole. Some sections of the media.
Sorry, Sarabji. A pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure talking to you, Karan.